Today we're going to take a look at the greatest talk show hosts ranked. A good talk show host is easily taken for granted. They should be easy to talk to, witty, as well as sensitive and serious when the mood calls for it. A bad talk show host can easily ruin an interview, while a great one will build rapport with their guests. There have been hundreds of different talk show hosts over the years, but only a few of them are truly great. Today, we're going to look at the top 20 talk show hosts ever. Make sure you stick around till the very end so you don't miss number 1 greatest talk show host of all time. Before we get started though, click the like button if you're excited to see our rankings. And don't forget to subscribe to Factsverse for more videos. Factsverse presents the world's 20 greatest talk show hosts ranked. Arsenio Hall. This famous comedian created his own late-night talk show called The Arsenio Hall Show. It first aired in 1989 and ran for 5 years before its eventual end in September of 1994. The mark of a good talk show host is being able to make your guests feel comfortable enough to tell you anything, and Arsenio Hall passed that test with flying colors. Perhaps one of the most iconic moments of this show was when Bill Clinton himself appeared to play saxophone before he was officially elected as president. Arsenio Hall was even smooth enough to get President Clinton to admit that he once tried and failed to smoke marijuana. Larry King. Maybe the real reason Larry King made this list is due to nostalgia, but you can't deny the feeling of comfort that his trademark Brooklyn accent gives you. Larry King was never one to beat around the bush, and his straightforward questions were refreshing compared to many other talk show hosts at the time. The Larry King Show ran for 16 years until 1994. He continued as a talk show host, however, until his eventual retirement in 2010. Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel certainly isn't the best interviewer out there, which is why he's lower on our list than witty, fast-paced talk show hosts like David Letterman. In a word, Jimmy Kimmel is average. While he may not be strong when it comes to interviewing guests, his show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, has plenty of interesting and entertaining ideas. For example, the show boasts the hilarious and creative segment, Celebrities Read Mean Tweets, which is exactly what it sounds like. In this segment, celebrities are sat down and given a list of mean tweets that people have written about them, which leaves plenty of opportunities for hilarious reactions. Even if he isn't the funniest talk show out there, there's something to be said for his creativity. Jack Paar. Jack Paar began hosting The Tonight Show in 1957, and his fame immediately took off. Paar wasn't afraid to talk about his feelings in any situation, even if the topic was controversial. There's something refreshing about talk show hosts who aren't afraid to speak their minds. Jack Paar was a sensitive man who didn't like to be censored, which led to a few spats between him and guests. At one point, he even forced the actor Mickey Rooney to leave the show. Jack Paar hosted for The Tonight Show for 5 years before eventually moving on with his life. Tom Snyder. Tom Snyder hosted The Tomorrow Show from 1973 to 1982. He hosted for many celebrity guests, and John Lennon's final televised interview also took place on The Tomorrow Show. His iconic tall silhouette and winning smile, combined with a somewhat abrasive nature, have caused many other comedians to do impressions of him. His bad comb-over and sideburns somehow suited him, although his snippy personality eventually led to his downfall. The show was canceled in 1982 by NBC, and Snyder found himself replaced with David Letterman. Still, Snyder's forward nature resulted in many open and straightforward interviews, which can be refreshing these days. If you think more talk show hosts should speak their mind, click the like button. Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen DeGeneres is quite a change from the many abrasive personalities that grace most talk show television shows. Instead, she prides herself on being cheery and friendly to all of her guests. Her talk show, Ellen, is focused more on the wholesome aspects of life, as well as fun, practical jokes that don't harm anyone. She has a lovable, goofy, and boisterous personality. Even the toughest of guests find themselves inevitably giving in to her warm and amicable conversations. While a lot of her content is pretty tame, it can be nice to watch interviews that aren't focused on making the guests as uncomfortable as possible. Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue's talk show ran from 1970 to 1996 and was groundbreaking for encouraging audience participation. According to Oprah Winfrey, his style eventually paved the way for her own show. Donahue wasn't afraid to discuss important issues such as gender equality, sexuality, and race. He actively listened to minorities and oppressed groups of people and took the issue of feminism very seriously. Phil also appeared on other talk shows such as The Today Show. He was a talented host who used his skills for many long years, and he continues his work to this day. Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy brings much-needed positive energy to The Tonight Show. He's much younger than previous hosts of the famous show, and it shows in his style. He's all about good-natured comedy. He's not the strongest interviewer, as he tends to laugh at nearly everything, but his creativity has revived the art of late-night shows. While The Tonight Show appeared to be fizzling out for a while, Jimmy Fallon brought it back full force by interacting with celebrities in unique and humorous ways. Lip-sync battles, comedy sketches, and impersonations all help brighten up his episodes. Dick Cavett. Dick Cavett's stardom has humble origins. He began working at Time as a copy boy, but one day he decided to sneak into one of the offices at NBC and hand a list of jokes he wrote to Jack Paar. The famous talk show host then hired Dick Cavett as a writer, where he eventually grew in status and skill before hosting his own show in 1969. He wasn't afraid to discuss his political opinions, which led to a few tense conversations with guests. He focused more on intellect than humor, and many of his interviews ended with deep and serious discussions. Craig Ferguson. Craig Ferguson has hosted for shows such as The Late Late Show, as well as his own game show. He perfectly mastered the balance between comedy and seriousness. While his show remained light and fun most of the time, Ferguson wasn't afraid to discuss more grave topics. At one point, he even opened up about his experience with alcoholism. He also stated that comedy should attack the powerful and not the vulnerable. This is a stance many talk show hosts have neglected to take. Ferguson's defense of the vulnerable has made him a respectable and iconic talk show host. Terry Gross. Terry Gross is famous for being both the host and executive producer of the NPR show Fresh Air. She isn't afraid to ask her guests very pointed questions, and she even managed to scare Bill O'Reilly out of an interview. Heated debates and intellectual storms are common when it comes to Terry Gross, and she never fails to speak her mind. When interviewing Kiss's lead singer Gene Simmons, she didn't hold back on the sexist comments. Terry concluded the interview by simply saying, "My impression is that you don't have much sympathy for anyone. You're just so deep into yourself. If you think you're good at debating, your skills will be put to the test against the fearless Terry Gross." Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien didn't have a great start when it came to hosting talk shows. He began as a comedy writer who replaced David Letterman in 1993 as a host for late night. However, with very little performing experience, O'Brien caused ratings to drop until Letterman was forced to take over again. O'Brien was then allowed to host The Tonight Show instead, but his reign was short-lived. After only a few months, Jay Leno replaced him. O'Brien became bitter and angry, but this fire fueled his new talk show, Conan, which allowed him to finally find success. Stephen Colbert. This witty talk show host brought a breath of fresh air to The Late Show after the famous David Letterman. He began in 2015 and continues to host today. Stephen Colbert is highly praised for his brilliance when it comes to both comedy and politics, which makes him a formidable interviewer. He isn't afraid to rip his guests a new one, and he does it all with a winning smile. His ironic sense of humor frequently calls out bigotry and incompetence, both in celebrities and in government. We hope to see plenty more of this intelligent and hilarious host in the future. Garry Shandling. Garry Shandling stars as Larry Sanders in The Larry Sanders Show. It's a brilliant spin on late-night talk shows, a witty and self-aware parody of celebrities. The show lasted for 6 seasons with a total of 90 episodes, each one as hilarious as the last. Garry Shandling's experience in stand-up comedy and guest appearances on The Tonight Show led to ultimate success with The Larry Sanders Show. It was nominated for a shocking total of 56 Emmys, and even made the list as one of the top 50 television shows ever aired. Oprah Winfrey. The Oprah Winfrey Show aired for an amazing total of 25 years, averaging about 40 million viewers every week. This amazing woman is so popular, people were even hoping she would run for president. Her warm and friendly personality makes her a wonderful talk show host. While the subjects of her show were more emotional and serious than some of the others on the list, she was able to create a comfortable and genuine atmosphere in every interview. Marc Maron. While he may have started as a bitter and narcissistic failed stand-up comedian, Marc Maron turned a corner when he began an interview podcast known as WTF. Twice a week, his somewhat neurotic interviews take place in his garage in California. He's not as bitter anymore. In fact, there's a lot of empathy behind his interviews. He's a hilarious host who isn't afraid to get to the heart of each interview. He can be surprisingly deep and sentimental at times, and this helps his guests to feel comfortable opening up about serious and emotional topics. Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart may have started as a stand-up comedian, but he's also worked as an extremely prolific talk show host. He managed to host for his own show, as well as both The Late Show and The Daily Show. Stewart even helped to greatly increase The Daily Show's popularity, and both his humor and candor make him a wonderful talk show host. Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson took over The Tonight Show after Jack Paar left, albeit reluctantly. He at first declined NBC's offer, but he was soon found to be irreplaceable. He hosted from 1962 until 1992, an amazing 30 years. His final show totaled 50 million viewers, who all tuned in to say a final farewell. Johnny Carson died in 2005, but this talk show host legend will remain in our hearts until the end of time. His wit and humor were unparalleled, and he has influenced many of the biggest talk show hosts of today. David Letterman. Of course, David Letterman is number 2 on today's list. He debuted on Late Night with David Letterman in 1982 and has since become a formidable talk show host. While snippy and abrasive at times, he isn't afraid to be sentimental as well. His goal has always been to bring the element of surprise to late-night TV, and he consistently delivers. Howard Stern. The number 1 talk show host of all time is Howard Stern. He's reigned as a talk show host for well over 30 years, and he still shows no signs of stopping. He has that special charm that convinces nearly any guest to divulge their deepest secrets and emotions, a gift only a few people are blessed with. Howard Stern is intolerant towards phonies, and he isn't afraid to call out any guest he thinks of as fake. His honest and abrasive nature makes him an iconic, refreshing, and naturally gifted talk show host. That's all for our ranked list of talk show hosts. Did you agree with Howard Stern as the best talk show host on this list? Or do you think somebody else should have taken the title for number 1? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Facts Verse for more videos.